The night was filled with a strange silence. It wasn't an empty silence. It was a tense one, as if creation itself were holding its breath. Jesus was walking toward Gethsemane with a weight only he understood. And among the disciples, there was one who also carried a weight, but didn't know how to interpret it. His name was Peter. Impulsive, brave, passionate, ready to die for Jesus. Or at least, that's what he believed. That night, Peter walked with the confidence of someone who thinks he could never fail. Someone who believes he knows his own heart. Someone who is convinced that his love and loyalty are enough. But what Peter didn't know, what he couldn't imagine, was that in just a few hours, he would face the greatest test of his life, and he would not overcome it. Because Peter's betrayal did not happen when he opened his mouth to deny Jesus. It didn't begin in a foreign courtyard, nor in front of a servant girl pointing at him. No, Peter's betrayal began long before that. It began when he stopped listening, when he stopped discerning, when he stopped obeying. It began in silence, internally, secretly, just like all human falls begin. Jesus warned them, "Tonight, all of you will fall away because of me." And Peter replied, "Even if everyone else falls away, I never will." Strong words. Words full of love, yes, but also full of pride. Because Peter wasn't listening to Jesus' diagnosis. He was listening to his own inner voice saying, "I'm not like the others." And maybe without realizing it, you've said that too. Maybe you've believed there are areas where you would never fall. Maybe you've trusted more in your own strength than in God's warning. That's where betrayal begins. Jesus responded with a truth that cut through the air. "Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." It wasn't condemnation. It was a warning, an opportunity to prepare, a call to humility, an invitation to stay alert. But Peter didn't see it that way. He took it as a challenge, and he said, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." Do you see it? The betrayal didn't begin when Peter failed. It began when he stopped paying attention, when he placed his emotions above God's word, when he decided he knew himself better than Jesus did. And that same dynamic repeats today, more than you think. We all have a courtyard where our faith will be tested. It's not always a literal courtyard, but a hostile environment, a place where pressure tightens, where voices confront you, where your sense of security shakes, a place where, suddenly, what you thought was clear becomes blurry, a place where what you promised in confidence collides with how you truly live. Peter reached his courtyard, one lit by a fire, one filled with strangers, one where Jesus was not physically by his side. And when the servant girl stared at him and said, "You were with him," Peter's heart went to war against itself. And the question is, what war would be triggered inside you if someone confronted you in that same environment? Because whether you notice it or not, you also have courtyards where you deny Jesus through your decisions, through your words, through your silence, through your priorities, through your habits, through your distractions, through your excuses. Peter's betrayal is not an ancient story. It's a mirror where those moments appear, when you knew God spoke to you, but you chose to ignore it. When you knew what the right decision was, but chose the comfortable one. When you knew you had to speak the truth, but you stayed silent to avoid problems. When you knew God was calling you to pray, but you chose to sleep. When you knew you needed to resist temptation, but you let it in. You don't need to say, "I do not know the man," with your lips in order to deny him. You deny him every time your life walks in another direction. You deny him every time outer pressure weighs more than inner conviction. You deny him every time comfort has more authority than obedience. But let's go back to Peter. After the first denial, the ground was already shaking beneath him. The second denial was stronger. The third, more desperate. And then, in the midst of the courtyard noise, the rooster crowed. That sound was a blow to his soul. A reminder. Jesus had said it. Peter had ignored it. And now he was shattered inside. But here comes the most powerful part, and the easiest to forget. Jesus predicted his fall, but he also predicted his return. Jesus knew Peter would fail, but he also knew he would come back. He knew he would stumble, but he also knew he would be restored. Because Peter's story does not end in betrayal, it ends in transformation. Betrayal reveals your weakness. Restoration reveals his grace. And this also applies to you. Maybe you too have fallen in courtyards where you promised you would never fall. Maybe you've heard yourself saying things you never thought you would say. Maybe you've found yourself denying with actions what you declared with words. Maybe you've cried when you realized what you had done. But listen to this. The same Jesus who looked at Peter after his fall is the one who looks at you today, and not with condemnation, but with an invitation to rise, to return, to be restored, to walk in the identity he saw in you before you even knew who you were. Peter went from denying Jesus in a courtyard to proclaiming him with power before thousands. He went from hiding to leading, from trembling to healing the sick, from failing to becoming a rock. That is what Jesus does with those who admit their fall and return to him. But here comes the part many prefer to ignore. You cannot be restored from something you won't acknowledge. You cannot be healed from something you justify. You cannot move forward while carrying a weight you refuse to surrender. Peter's betrayal is a reminder that the greatest spiritual battle doesn't happen outside, but inside. Not against visible demons, but against inner blindness, against self-sufficiency, against pride, against the illusion that we are stronger than we really are. And do you know the first step to not repeating Peter's betrayal? Not trusting your strength, trusting his grace. The second step, listening to the warnings, even when you don't like them, even when they confront you, even when they reveal areas you'd rather not see. The third step, staying alert, not only praying when you remember, not only seeking God when something hurts, staying alert. Because Peter didn't fall when he denied, he fell when he slept. The denial was the fruit. The root was the lack of vigilance in Gethsemane. Jesus said, "Watch and pray so that you do not enter into temptation." Peter slept. And hours later, he denied. The question is, are you watching or sleeping? Are you discerning or just reacting? Are you listening or responding impulsively? Are you obeying or making promises you're not sustaining with discipline? Peter's betrayal confronts you, yes, but it also guides you. Because, in reality, betrayal is not the end. The end is Jesus' gaze. A gaze that does not destroy, but restores. A gaze that does not humiliate, but awakens. A gaze that does not abandon, but calls. A gaze that transforms a traitor into a witness. The impulsive into a leader. The fallen into a pillar. And that same gaze is upon you today. Maybe you've been in your own courtyard. Maybe you've failed in ways you don't want to admit. Maybe you've drifted farther than you realized. Maybe you've repeated patterns you thought you had overcome. Maybe you've acted against your own convictions. But listen closely. If Jesus predicted Peter's fall, he also predicted his rising. And if God is showing you something today, it's not to condemn you. It's to awaken you, to prepare you, to transform you, to lift you up. What separated Peter from Judas was not the mistake. It was the response. One surrendered to guilt. The other surrendered to grace. What will you do? Because maybe you don't have a rooster crowing in your courtyard, but you do have warnings calling you, situations revealing your heart, moments when God says, "Stay awake," moments when the Spirit whispers, "That decision is pulling you away from me," moments when heaven says, "Come back." Peter's betrayal is not in the past. It's in every decision where you choose whether to acknowledge Jesus or deny him. With your words, with your character, with your habits, with your time, with your life. And now, heaven asks you a question as ancient as that night, yet as current as your own soul. Will you repeat Peter's betrayal, or will you allow God to write the same ending he wrote for him? Because the one who denied was the same who proclaimed. The one who fell was the one who built. The one who trembled was the one who transformed the world. Everything depends on what you do after your fall. And today, you decide what chapter comes next.